3, 4.
We just live right now, man. It's going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello, and welcome to Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, the staff of Brewhoop, episode 195. My name is Riley Feldman, one of your usual co-hosts, who's not been very usual for a little while, but very glad to be back. I want to thank Adam and Kyle for holding down the fort while I was gone, dealing with some medical stuff, but I'm feeling much, much better these days. I'll be able to get through this podcast without keeling over in pain, trying to hold it all in while I try to get these flaming hot Bucks takes off. So thank you guys for stepping in for me. I appreciate it. Glad to be back. Of course, it's the week and a half leading up to the trade deadline. Who else am I going to talk about it with than my other usual co-hosts? Let's start with you, Kyle Carr. Kyle, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing all right. It's been not a bad time for the Bucks. You know, they've won a lot of games. Unfortunately, lost James Harden, which stunk, but it's okay. Otherwise, I'm good.
Good. Adam Paris, how are you doing this evening?
I'm well. Thank you for asking. Got snow in Charleston this week. Rarely get that. I also want to shout out my brother, Dylan Paris. Brief time as a brew hooper. Real heads remember the 3 articles he wrote, but he got engaged this weekend. So shout out to him and his longtime girlfriend, Darcy. So yeah, I'm doing well. Great.
Shout out to you, Dylan. Adam, have you been lording it over your neighbors? Have you done the old Midwest superiority thing? Go, or is it like a substantial amount of snow? There's just that thing, you know, it was like New Orleans. Everyone's like, oh my God, they shut down New Orleans for a couple inches of snow. It's like everybody logically understands that these places are not equipped for it. So, but did you flash your superiority card at all?
I didn't. I think if I had seen anyone else really outside very much, then yeah, I probably would have. But a lot of people were bunkered inside. I will say I was impressed with how the town did. We have 2 snowplows in our town, and they've been sitting around for 5 years, and they cleared up most of the snow. So they did a pretty decent job, all things considered.
Good. Well, that's great to hear. I'm glad to hear that you're okay. And also, one more time, shout out to your family. So I guess in that case, we're all in a good mood. Why not talk about the trade deadline, figure out what the hell the Bucks are going to do about it. Let's just break it down. Let's just cut right through it here, folks. It's going to be tough. The Bucks are a second apron team. If you have gone to the ESPN, Sport Track, whatever your trade machine of choice is, you will find very quickly that it is not easy to make any trade of any sort of substance work for the Bucks. But that's why we're here to maybe come up with a couple of guys that might be interesting to look at and maybe a little bit more feasible. But let's run through a couple of the facts real quick before we start our discussion. So trade deadline is February 6th. I believe it's usually like 4:00 Eastern time, something around that time. The Bucks are a second apron team. What that means is they're not just above the luxury cap, they're above the next apron of the luxury cap. The main restriction that means for the Bucks is they cannot aggregate salaries in for a guy. What do I mean by that? So let's say Bobby Portis, who has been spoken a lot about as a potential trade candidate, if you send him out, in the past, you could have taken in 2 guys of similar salary to do the matching, to bring it in. Maybe you waive somebody at the end of the bench and then you reach your roster compliance that way. Nowadays, the Bucks can send out Bobby and get a single player back, but they can't send out Bobby and get 2 guys back or 3 guys back or whatever. They could send out Bobby and say MarJon and get 2 guys back, but then now you have to start looking at how do you get the salaries to match, things like that. So it's a lot tougher for the Bucks, and it's not just the Bucks. There's a lot of teams that have these restrictions, which is why if you looked at Brewhoop at our trade candidate series, if you looked online, anybody putting out trades, they get convoluted quick. Like gone are really the days of doing a 1-to-1 with one other team. Now you're going 3 teams, 4 teams. If you see a 5-team monstrosity and have no idea why anybody would be doing what is happening in that trade, well, you got to do what you got to do to get the green thumbs up from the trade machine. So that's kind of the situation where we're at right now. As far as the Bucks go, reporting, not that surprising, says that Khris Middleton, Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton are your main guys who are trade bait at this point or trade candidates. MarJon, obviously, we team already declined his team option, so they'll just get rid of him if they can. Who knows about the other younger guys, how much they believe him. Again, potentially filler or sweetener in a trade. And then, of course, the big trade draft asset that they have is the 2031 first-round pick, in which case the Bucks will probably be a largely irrelevant franchise at that point, which is why it has value. But TBD. I guess I'll open it up to you guys. We can kind of discuss about areas of need, people like that, but anything in the lead up to the deadline here that has been interesting about all the news that we've heard, something that kind of stuck out to you, or something that you're seeing reading the tea leaves that kind of surprises you about where the Bucks are at heading into this?
I think it's been interesting how the Bucks keep being mentioned as a team to watch, whether it is for Jimmy Butler or Bradley Beal, and it seems like those are the only two. And part of it is, I think, this narrative that the Bucks are desperate to do something, which I don't know if desperate is the right word. Would Milwaukee like to make a move that would improve their odds? Yes. But I also think because of them being in the second apron, that makes it really difficult to navigate through that. And it's kind of like, well, what? And if you're other teams, you're like, why would I take, Bobby Portis, who's going to opt out? Why would I take Khris Middleton, who has a player option? Maybe he takes that and then it's $33 million. And if not, he walks. Why would I take Pat Connaughton, who is a net negative at $9 million, and he's going to accept that player option as well? Like, there's just so many. It's interesting how it's like painting Milwaukee as desperate, but at the same time, I think everyone realizes who Milwaukee would be willing to trade, and no one's going to want that. I think that's kind of the thing. It's like no one probably wants Khris. No one wants Bobby. No one's going to want Pat Connaughton. So it kind of makes it difficult to really envision why. And also, why would Milwaukee want to be in a trade with Miami to help them out of their situation? Like, they're not going to want to do that.
Adam, anything jumping out at you as you lead up to the deadline?
I mean, I think Kyle's right. I think it's interesting that the Bucks are thrown into this stuff. And like he said, they're an easy team to throw in because John Horst statistically basically makes a trade at every trade deadline. Got to ship out Dante DiVincenzo for Serge Ibaka when you can, that kind of thing. So in that vein, unsurprising that they're getting thrown in. I feel like they also just get thrown into random stuff all the time. I mean, there always seem to be a team that's easy to throw out there and put into rumors. I mean, I think the thing we have to talk about is the fact that they were mentioned for these potential big fish candidates, right? Like Jimmy, Riley's doing air quotes, Jimmy Butler and Bradley Beal. I mean, that both of which seem to basically be all for naught at this point. But I mean, what did you think, Riley, when you saw that kind of stuff coming over Twitter?
The only thing I was the only thing I thought of was like, which one would make me more sad to acquire at the deadline? Like, who would I be more upset to have on the team? And I mean, it's quite obviously Bradley Beal because that contract is horrible. And it's amazing that if he gets traded, two teams have found a way to get him to waive his no trade clause, which is not a good situation. But I can't imagine the Bucks are going to be able to make it third time's the charm when we inevitably want to trade Bradley Beal. I just thought it was random. I don't know. I didn't really I understand. Okay, Giannis wants to win. Damian Lillard, the Giannis Dame thing, and this especially a couple weeks ago when the Bucks were still seemed a little bit more up and down. I mean, they were coming into their own, but still, you could be like, oh, they're sort of middling. They're kind of middle of the pack in the East. Obviously, they've turned things around. Sans the Clippers loss, they won 5 straight prior to that. They look a lot better. Damian Lillard is coming into form, so it made sense that they got thrown in there just as a thought experiment. But there was nothing really all that concrete that tied the team outside of the one Phoenix radio play-by-play guy who may or may not have sources. I don't know how much to evaluate for that guy. So I guess the Jimmy thing was somewhat intriguing if it wasn't the situation as it is, which would just be as sad as Bradley Beal, because you either get him and you say, okay, we'll pay you a huge extension, which would also handicap the team, or you get him and say, hey, what if we played out the season? And then he gets pissed and he doesn't take the floor, or as Kyle was saying, prior to the recording, he does take the player option. You're like, okay, well, shit. Now we're paying this guy $50 million. That wasn't exactly what we were trying to go for. So, I don't know. I guess it was just odd to me. I think it's just a symptom of teams outside the Bucks kind of reading their own narratives into the situation. And again, we've been critical. We've talked about how it doesn't look nearly as good, or had not looked nearly as good as we had hoped, even, like a season and a half in. But now it feels less relevant for a lot of reasons, like you said, but also because the Bucks don't feel to me as like, oh, we really need to figure out who this third guy is. They've kind of sorted out at least a team-wide system to make things work in the short term.
Well, and it's also who would the Bucks, because then it's like, okay, you take Bradley Beal, that's not a good idea. You take Jimmy Butler, that's not a good idea. I know Zach LaVine has been a name that's been floated out there. That's not a good idea. And I think that would be a bad one. Yes, he is a better scorer and would probably be the best of the three between Jimmy and Bradley Beal. But at the same time, we already lament this team's defense. And adding Zach LaVine is not going to make that better in any way, shape, or form. I get that he's improved and he's doing better, but that's 43 years, 43 mil for another 2 years. So you're kind of back in square one. You're still going to be in the second apron. You're still going to be in this situation. It's just now you have a guy that's 29 years old who, quite frankly, could care less about defense. And then we're going back to the issue of, okay, we're getting exposed. And then that's another dude that needs the ball. And is he going to get the ball enough? Probably not.
Are we going to be able to get Zach LaVine, who apparently has stated he would like to stay in Chicago past the trade deadline? Okay, we send him to Milwaukee. And then Doc says, hey, Zach, we love what you do. We're really excited about having you. We're going to have you fill the Khris Middleton off the bench role. And then that's going to go well for everybody involved. I can't see, like, at least Khris is a veteran. He's been around long enough. I think he does go along to get along, by quite obviously based off of just like sure shot attempts. Like he's perfectly capable of just being the third guy. It's like any of these guys that you bring in immediately, or you're back to being like, whose team is it? It's like, of course, Jimmy Butler's going to show up and be like, it's my team. He's not going to do the Dame thing where he's like, oh no, this is Giannis's team. Jimmy Butler will show up and be like, I was in Milwaukee first. Like he'll call dibs. On the city. He's like, Giannis's city. He's like, this is my city. What are they talking about? So even the Zach LaVine, but what's strange too is like, okay, the Bucks get thrown in. I also understand it because we were also talking before the podcast. If you go to the trade deadline and you get past it and none of the guys we just said, primarily Bobby and Khris, are not traded, you kind of are almost forced immediately into contract extension talks just to not mess with the chance of them going and hitting the free agency market. Like, and then you think we're back to square one. Okay, not only did we not get off of Bobby, who people feel strongly about, but now we're paying Bobby actually more and for more years. And he's of an age profile that's not the end of the world, but you think people are going to be happy about that. And then people are already pissed about Khris, more or less, depending on your flavor of the day. It's like, actually, we just gave Khris a 275 extension. Oh, you think that's going to go well with people too? And again, these guys are all tradable, but I also understand wanting to be active just because you kind of have to then immediately get back to contract extension talks. And is that the place that the direction they want to go? It's like, how many seasons have we done? Man, they're getting pretty old. Should probably change it up. And we just double down like, we're actually going to re-sign these guys, these core guys, for a couple more seasons. So I also get it from that perspective. Am I reading too much into that as a motivating factor? Because I think you could make the argument that keeping Bobby and Khris, for all their flaws, seems to be like a somewhat winning play. Like there's less concern about fitting a new guy in. Again, the system seems to have worked out so more or less. The team gets hot at the right time. Like, am I overplaying the long-term concerns with the team for being a motivating factor for moving off these guys? Or like, I don't know how much that should even weigh into the discussion.
I don't think so. I think the tough part really is just with Bobby's salary, it's really hard to get a player that teams would be willing to part with at that salary. Because, like I think Rashad Holmes would be close. And it's like, am I really giving up Bobby for Rashawn Holmes? Like, is that going to make sense? And is that a better option? I don't know. Or and that's the tough part. It's like now you're starting to think, I know like Austin Reeves makes that much. Well, the Lakers aren't going to trade him. And you're not likely going to trade with a team in the Eastern Conference because they're not going to want to make a trade that helps you out. You look at the West, and then it kind of gets to, well, there's not a lot of teams that have players that would want to get traded. And again, I think it's more of you're not overplaying because at the same time, it kind of is going to be more or less the reality, as opposed to if the Bucks are going to make a move, it's going to have to be like a small Bobby or Pat kind of trade. And I don't think John Horst, I mean, he'll try, but I don't know if it's really going to work because if he was able to find a trade, he would have done it earlier. But I think that's kind of the tough part. So I don't think you're overplaying it, to be honest. I think it's kind of where we're at.
Here's my, let's circle back real quick to Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal. If we get one of those guys, how many positive assets would need to be attached to them for you to be like, okay, I'm sort of on board with this? Are we talking like, and I can't imagine Miami and Phoenix have a lot, but that's the only way I think you can rationally argue for one of those guys is like, oh yeah, we'll take your slop, your guy that you clearly don't want or doesn't want to be there, if you give us a ton as well in addition to. And like, is there a certain level of like young players and or draft assets that you'd be like cool with Jimmy Butler? I mean, I guess, would you guys be cool with Jimmy Butler or Kyle's guy? Is there anybody
Ryan
that
Dunn?
you'd be okay with?
I mean, if
Ryan Dunn, hell yeah.
Ryan Dunn.
If they were dumb enough to do it, yeah, hell yeah, do it. Sure, I'll suck it up. You throw in Ryan Dunn or you throw in, Khalil Ware, like, sure, I'll suck it up.
Dude, I really would have loved Khalil Ware after watching the last game. God damn.
Like, sure, if a team's going to be dumb enough to throw those guys in and we'll have to take one of Bradley Beal or Jimmy Butler, okay, fine.
We're such simpletons. All it takes is a guy who was drafted in the mid to late first rounds of just the previous draft to be like, fuck it, I'll take on Jimmy Butler. We'll take what it takes.
Like, I'm going to view it as, okay, yeah, we this was not a Jimmy Butler trade. This was a Khalil Ware trade, or this was a Ryan Dunn trade.
Khris Middleton's career as a Milwaukee Buck comes to an end, and Kyle will remember it as the Khalil Ware trade. That is so good. Like,
I don't think there's any amount that they could throw. Like, just genuinely, the vibes have finally reached sort of an equilibrium with this team where I feel a little more comfortable watching them. And I can't even imagine how awful it would be to throw Bradley Beal in there as a combination or Jimmy Butler. And obviously, if they did something fantastic on the basketball court, that would be great too. But I just have zero trust in Bradley Beal staying healthy. This is a team that already can barely stay healthy. And then Jimmy Butler, I mean, I'm more intrigued by him, but I just think, I mean, between him and Giannis, and that I would say you can't play AJJ at all in a playoff series then at that point. I just don't think the spacing would fit. So beyond, I don't love the basketball fit. I think from a vibes fit, it would just be truly abysmal to have either of them in Milwaukee.
If you thought we were kind of getting to be a leaky ship through Chris Haynes before, just wait until one of those guys shows up. I mean, you might as well just open the locker room to everybody. I mean, the news is getting out left, right, and center. Doc can't help but get on every podcast he's invited on. I mean, he's actually calmed down on that a little bit this year.
Yeah, he's kept a low profile this season, which we appreciate.
Somebody got in his ears like, you have to stop going on random Bosnian podcasts to talk about NBA hoops, Doc. We have to chill out on it.
I think going 2-8 to start the season was kind of like I don't want you saying shit. You are 2-8, buddy.
Are both of you fine with the concept of trading Khris Middleton?
Yeah.
I think so. Go, Kat.
I mean, let's remember, I was the one that said trade Khris Middleton for Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga last year. And, I'm of the belief
my captain.
If the trade needs to happen, so be it. Like, yeah, it would be a bummer. I wouldn't want to trade Khris for, bums or Bradley Beal or Zach LaVine or Jimmy Butler. Like, I don't want to do that. But if you can get something of worth in a Khris Middleton trade, I have to be open to it. He's not someone that I'm like, absolutely not. You cannot trade him. Like, he's not in that area. I mean, hell, neither is Dame. But they're in the I'd be open to it. I think if you want to really try and compete and be this contender, you need players that can play two ways, or you need someone that has such an elite skill at something that the Bucks don't have. Like if you can get an elite big or a good backup big to Brook or a future successor to Brook, you do that. If you can find another guard to handle like someone that can handle a Jalen Brunson or a quick point guard, go for it, because those are probably the two areas that the Bucks need help on the most. And I think you got to be open to it. I'm not saying just trade Khris for whatever, but we can't just sit. We understand like the emotional attachment we all have to Khris, but at the same time, if your goal is to try and build this next group of a team that's going to try and compete in the next couple of years while you still have Giannis, you have to make a move like this sometimes. You might have to.
I think the tough part, so conceptually, I'm okay with trading Khris. The tough part is then you go back into all the second apron things. You like trading Bobby's tough, but 12 million, you can kind of find something in that middle range. Maybe you get some draft stuff in there just to make it work or whatever. 30 million, which I think is what Khris is at, is kind of a tough-ish number. Presumably the guy who's making that you're getting back is like good, but is he good enough to justify like us having to send something with them? So I think it's hard to do. The other tough part is, as we discussed, finding the right guy who's not going to need the usage numbers to take away from Damian Giannis. Very tough as well. And on top of all of that, there's a reason why Khris is always like Mr. Playoff. Like, it's now that the team has figured out its bearings a little bit, as long as Khris is healthy, can we make it work? Like, can we finally get the chance to see him alongside everybody else? It's just that challenge of, do you move off of him now, assuming that we're going to hit the plateau or even start heading down pretty quickly, and this is the time to move? And yes, maybe on paper we look at it and say, man, this really doesn't make a lot of sense, but the team is like, yo, Khris is cooked. This is not a good like the ankle situation, the leg situation is just not good. So I think that's really the only motivating thing for me is like, if they're really, really concerned about his ability to keep it going at a high level, not just this season, but like as soon as next season, and who knows if they can make that call. That's really the only thing that would motivate me strongly to try and make something happen. Because I feel you are going to get not pennies on the dollar, but like 50 cents on the dollar probably for Khris. And as with most trade deadlines around Khris, he's more valuable to the Bucks. He's always been most valuable to the Bucks. It's tough to find the fits. It's like, he'll go here, and it makes sense for Khris to go there. It's like, not really. It just kind of makes the most sense here with our situation. So conceptually, I'm okay. I just don't think it's going to happen. I really can't imagine it, barring one of those mega trades, in which case it's like, okay, what the hell are we doing anyways? So that would be my position on it. How about you, Adam? Are you okay with that, or okay with trading Khris conceptually?
I guess. I mean, I think both of you kind of said everything that I would say about it. I would say in recent weeks have kind of just felt a little bit more of like, I'm kind of comfortable going down with the ship when it comes to Khris as part of the team. I think, it's frustrating having him go through all this injury stuff and trying to figure it all out and see him taking so long to kind of get back to the level that he's at. But at the same time, like you both said, I think it's kind of difficult to find someone that combines his level of skill between passing and shooting and dribbling and running an offense. And I know it hasn't looked perfect with the 3 stars on the floor so far, but the only way I could see it is if you find someone who's like a true 2-way guard or small forward who like will really fit the vein of what you want and be able to handle some of the defensive assignments that I have some questions about Andre Jackson Jr. being able to do. But who that guy is, I don't know. I didn't spend that much any time today. I basically didn't spend doing Khris stuff because I just kind of felt like that probably won't happen.
So here are some players. So Khris has right now, I think it's 31 million. Here are some players that are at 30 million or close to like 30 to 32. Khris has Porzingis. Boston's not trading him. Tyler Hero, Miami's not going to trade him. Jalen Johnson, Atlanta's not going to trade him. Orlando Magic, Jalen Suggs. No. Jared Allen, no. Brandon Ingram, maybe. because I think his is expiring, so that's kind of like it's not expiring, or it was one of those, like maybe Jamal Murray, probably not. Like odds are, like I know he's struggling, but I don't think Denver would trade him away. CJ McCollum's at 32, Jordan Poole's at 32, Jeremy Grant.
You got me fucked up if you think I'm going to be reliving the Dame CJ McCollum experiment in Milwaukee with Giannis.
Yeah,
That's our move. Come on.
This is the range that's there, so I don't think it's happening. I like that's just a lot of players that either are too valuable for their own teams, or why would Milwaukee want them?
Trying to see how much does Zion make? Do we go for the Zion reclamation project? That's
let me look into that.
I think it's 36 million. So that's also, again, it just gets convoluted. Then you start bringing in, it's like, okay, Khris gets routed to whoever because that other team's going to route whomever to us, and then somebody's going to get draft picks along the way.
All right, Brandon Ingram is now up to 36 and he has an expiring. Zion Williamson is at 36 million, and he still has 3 more years.
Yeah, it's just hard. It's just hard, and I think ultimately, I think there will be people disappoint. It's tough. I always have a tough time. I mean, literally, I've been gone for a month, so I really can't take the temperature on Khris all that much. But he's got his detractors. You got people always like, Jesus Christ, can we please move along? But at a guy, it's almost like I'm trying to think of the last time a team that was trying to compete, trying to contend, sent out a guy of his caliber, even just like salary slots at the trade deadline. Like, it's just really, especially in this environment. So I think we should prepare ourselves. If you need preparing, there's probably, I'm sure, a lot of people that don't need preparing for Khris to still be here. The questions are really around Bobby and Pat. And like you said, Kyle, who the hell wants Pat Connaughton on his contract? I don't. I struggle to think. Yeah, my follow-up question to you, Adam, was going to be like, when I named Khris, Bobby, Pat, were you most shocked to learn that Pat was in trade
yeah, you say I've really been out of the loop. I did not realize that.
You're like, why is Pat getting traded? Hold on, what's that?
I thought he had a little pep in his step the other night. I think
I'm sure he did. I'm sure.
No.
Okay, so let's reduce it. Let's say Khris is off the board just because it's too convoluted. I think Bobby is the main trade candidate. He has been for a while. Pat, maybe some of the filler guys. We don't even need to get too convoluted about making it work in the trade machine, but what would be, Kyle, you kind of already started it. So like positions or areas of greatest need that you would think either addressed right now or something for the medium term. And then are there any players that you've seen bandied about, even in the trade candidate pieces that Brewhoop has been running, that seems interesting to you and at least somewhat feasible?
I think in terms of what I still think a backup big is needed because you have Brook Lopez on an expiring deal. And what is the plan if they don't bring Brook back? Like that's the thing that always worries me is there is no plan for what you're going to do without Brook. Are we going to just find some big on the minimum that could work? Are we going to try and do another year of Giannis and Bobby? Are we going to draft a bit? Like, what is the plan? Because that's what concerns me. Just because there isn't really anything out there that makes me sit and go, okay, this is what we're going to do. So I think a backup big is absolutely necessary. We know Bobby cannot do it. We know Giannis cannot do it. So at this point, we are just kind of throwing it out there. I would say Kevon Looney would be I know Van just put that one out recently. I think he would be interesting. I think he would be the best option, but I don't understand. I know the trade he put was like the Bucks get Kevon Looney, the Bulls get Pat Connaughton, Gary Payton II, and some other dude, and then the Warriors get Vucevic. And part of me is like, why would the Bulls do that deal? Yes, you get a 2025 lottery protected and the 2031 round 2. But why the hell would the Bulls do that trade? Like, yes, they're incompetent, unserious at times, but I don't think they're that incompetent, unserious. So I would say Kevon Looney would be like an interesting one to get and he's also a Milwaukee native, so I think that would maybe like get him the boost that he needs. That's like I'd say backup big is like the biggest one for me, and then if you can find a guard that can handle guarding the Jalen Brunsons, potentially like a Drew Holiday, Donovan Mitchell, or Darius Garland, great. That I feel like might have to just be more of like a committee option as opposed to a backup big where it's like there is no plan B and there is no succession plan.
Adam, thoughts on that, or a position of need that you're thinking of?
Okay, so I think that's interesting, Kyle, because my working assumption has always basically been once Brooke is gone, we'll just be kind of effed unless Horst maybe finds someone else. But I'm also a big Brooke fan, so I get that. So when I was looking at the roster, I was kind of I'm looking at Bobby because I've been wanting to get rid of Bobby for a while. Not because I don't like him, but because I just don't see his fit in the playoffs. So for you two, I've been trying to think like, okay, I've been looking at it, trying to think about my 7-man or 8-man playoff lineup or whatever. So who is getting like played out of that group first, right? Is it Bobby who is going to be gone? And do we feel like we need someone who's going to be more of a tweener in that big zone? Or is it one of the sort of guard forward guys? Like, I don't think I think Taurean Prince is going to play no matter what. I think Khris will play no matter what. But like the Gary Trent Jr., Andre Jackson Jr., AJ Green sort of triumvirate, I think they could all sort of do their thing, but they also all have some issues. So like, I don't know, Riley, which of those areas between that sort of group of three or the Bobby as like sort of backup big, someone who could fill in the small ball lineups, like where do you see us having a bigger issue and a hole we might need to fill come playoff time?
It's so easy to pick on Bobby. Like his mess ups are so painfully obvious, and when he's bad on offense, he's so bad on offense. So it's you have such a visceral reaction to Bobby. My concern about the team though, like the whole time, and Bobby is part of this, so it's not like he's exempt from it, but it continues to be like making sure the perimeter defense can work, that it will continue to work, and guys have improved a lot over that, but I almost wonder if that's my area of concern more. Like, I don't know, Bobby's the right age profile. Even if you extend him, it's probably still somewhat tradable. So like, I get where Kyle's coming from, and God forbid we're in a world where all of a sudden it's like Brooke Lopez leaves in this offseason and you're like, hey, we're in Bobby extension talks. And you're like, okay, well, I mean, either Tyler Smith has to turn out to be the greatest player of all time in very short order, or we're pulling off the scrap heap. So I understand thinking about trying to move a guy, not even to fix the rotation now, but just to have like something insurance policy heading forward. But I kind of wonder if it is that other group that like the unproven young guys. Maybe you're concerned about guards primarily or wings who have to defend a little bit. And are we good enough on that? So that's kind of where I'm kind of thinking, because throughout all the news, Damian Lillard has not been named in any of it. Like, I think the team is absolutely committed to him being out there. That's fine. He's playing well lately. I continue to be concerned about his defense, but if that's the case, then let's address building around that. And I know Bobby is a portion of it, but you try to just survive the minutes with Bobby. You're going to need a guy who's going to run next to Dame for a lot more minutes than Bobby's going to be out there. So that's kind of where I'm at, I think. But again, hard to figure out who you're going to get to fill that. Like, who's a good 3-and-D, guard or wing that's available for Pat Connaughton's money, and do you need to attach like a good draft pick to make it happen because it's Pat Connaughton? I don't know. That's the tough part.
And that's also the thing is, I don't want them trading that 2031 first. There is no player out there right now that seems to be available that is worth giving up that 2031, because it's likely that pick is going to be very valuable. Because best case scenario, it's maybe a low lottery to late, depending on what happens with the Bucks' future. Worst case scenario, it's a top 10 pick. I don't want them trading that because we don't know. I mean, maybe the world won't make it by 2031, but I still would not want to just willy-nilly trade it. That's what got us into a situation where we trade 5 second-round picks. We're like, oh, whatever, it's second-round picks, and then we get Jay Crowder and his waste of space.
I like the idea of John Horst consulting with his meteorological team to be like, hey, or like working with geopolitical risk analysts to be like, what are even the odds that this whole situation is still going by 2031? He's just like got a floating belly. He's like, A nuclear war looks pretty likely. Like, should we just move off of this now to try and make a run in the playoffs? I tend to agree, though, about the pick. Like, it's not even, I mean, yes, it would be great, but not great. If the team sucks, then it would be great to have it. But I don't think there's anybody of the caliber to even, it's not like if this doesn't result in a title that next season with Damian Giannis, you're absolutely screwed. You just kind of take stock of the situation then, and then you maybe do the pick when there's more flexibility. So I agree that I really wouldn't throw the 2031, but if that's going to be the case, finding somebody in exchange is going to be difficult. But I don't. Well, Adam, like, what do you think? So your same exercise that you threw to me, kind of where would you be leaning on that? On like the two groups versus playing Bobby out, or what do you think on that?
I don't know. I'm actually struggling quite a bit with it because my inclination is to get rid of Bobby, just because I'm just foreseeing. I appreciate what he does offensively, but I see the defensive issues. I also think there's going to be clear series this year, and we've seen clear games where Brook Lopez is not able to play a vast load of minutes, and we're going to need a quality person to play next to Giannis. But at the same time, I think that the group of AJ Green, Andre Jackson Jr., and Gary Trent Jr. have played better lately. I am quite anxious about both AJJ and AJ Green if this team is like going to be a title contender. Not because I don't believe in them, but the foul rates are really bad. You have to hope that the playoffs allow them to be a little more physical, hopefully. And they're both a little they're both unproven. Like you hope that they can make the leap, but if AJ Green comes in and misses his first 3 threes in a huge playoff game, is he going to keep shooting? I hope so. Is Andre Jackson Jr. going to attempt more than 4 shots in a playoff series? I mean, I hope so. Kind of need him to. But I think I still ultimately landed with I'd rather have someone who's like a little more malleable and possibly get rid of Bobby. So I had a few names, and I don't know how these would work perfectly, but I wanted to throw them out to you. Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering Kyle Anderson from the Warriors.
Is he older than you would expect him to be?
I think he's like 30.
Okay.
I'm not picking anyone young. I don't have anyone young that's on my list.
That's fair. Yeah, I feel like
and in this exercise, the piece going out is going to be Bobby. So this is the Bobby trade. Okay. Kyle Anderson, I don't know how he's been doing with the Warriors, but I know that a lot of Wolves fans who really don't know what winning basketball looks like, so take their opinion with a grain of salt. But they are convinced that he was like the straw that stirred the drink for the Warriors. Like losing Cat was a big loss, but I think they're really a lot more concerned about having lost Slow-Mo. So I think he's thought of as a great defensive communicator. I think he does a lot of connective things. I'd be interested in that. Put me in for interest on him.
Yeah. I think Kyle Anderson would be intriguing just because I think offensively it's a little bit more of a downside, but defensively it would be like you're sacrificing offense for defense. So I'm not opposed to it.
Okay. Maxi Kleber. He's like older. He's older than he's like 33, 34.
God damn it. Probably that would be more of like short term. If Rook can't play, then maybe Maxi's a little bit more flexible or has a little bit more athleticism, and then he's like your bridge guy, maybe to buy you a couple more years, essentially. I think that's okay. Like how much? I don't even know how good is he. Like good on defense? Because any guy who's like around,
he's supposed to be better at defense. He's supposed to be better at defense. Yeah.
Slight interest, but probably less interest than Kyle Anderson.
I think I'd lead towards I'd rather go Kyle Anderson.
Yeah.
Just because him being 33 is just like, all right, we're gonna walk into another situation. It's like, okay, what do you do with him in the future? And like, is it a stopgap fine, I guess, but I don't want to do a stopgap for Brook Lopez for a dude that's gonna. I don't know.
Kyle's prayers have been answered. He's like, finally, we have the successor to Brook Lopez. It's 30, 33, 34.
It's like, great. The successor is actually 33 years old. Oh, boy.
What about Larry Nance?
So he's been an interesting candidate for a while. The only thing that really gives me pause is the injury. I think God, I can't remember what surgery he had, but he's going to be out a little bit past the trade deadline, I think, if I recall correctly, last time I was taking a look at him. I kind of like him. I think that would be interesting. It really would depend on the physicals and all that, but he'd be an interesting guy. It was kind of strange, though, that when he was healthy, the Hawks are like, yeah, we're not going to play you. And then he kind of played a little bit, and then he got injured. And it's like, okay, what was going on there? I mean, he really couldn't break off the bench even a little bit. So that's a little concerning, but probably a worthwhile gamble just to see. And he's another guy whose age profile, I think, fits kind of like Bobby. Like if you're going to go trade a guy out, at least should be roughly the same age so that the profile fits with Giannis in particular. So I'd be interested in Larry Nance. I can't imagine it would take a lot to get him because he's injured and he was glued to the bench for large portions of the season. So from that perspective, that's kind of a good fit too.
Yeah, that was my bigger concern. Not the health, because I feel like, whatever. Like you could work past the health and hopefully he comes back healthy. But I mean, if Atlanta, who's not really doing much, they're kind of just treading water. They're kind of like, nah. Then, yeah.
Okay, last one I had that I was kind of intrigued by. What about Jayshawn Tate?
Quite literally have no idea who that is, if I'm just being straight up.
He's like a small forward on the Rockets who has not played as much. He was like, I think at this point you would have trouble if you sent out Bobby. You might not have a qualified big after him, but I would be intrigued on a buy low on him because Rockets gave him a decent deal a few years ago, like 3 years, $24 million, I think. He's an expiring, and he's not really playing on their team anymore. So he's someone I would be interested in possibly as a buy low.
I just have no clue what he actually. I've never heard of this guy, to be honest. I'm not gonna act like I do.
We could just make something up and say, "Oh yeah, I've been crushing a ton of Rockets film, and I'm very familiar with Jayshawn Tate's game." He's 6'4" and he plays as a power forward. Is he like?
He's like super long. Yeah.
Okay.
He must be long.
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of one man's trash is another contender's treasure, I guess.
Would you consider him for? Even though he plays big, would you think he's more someone that could potentially handle more of guards?
I don't know. I could see him as playing big. I mean, I almost like him playing big instead with the folks out there next to Giannis, if at all possible. But I don't know. I haven't watched him that much lately either. It's probably built on like 3 Twitter clips from 4 years ago, 3 years ago, or whatever, when he was stout in the post.
Jayshawn Tate is a problem. That's the first thing you saw. You're
basically, yeah.
You know what? Screw it. Why not? Just try it. What's the worst?
Okay, that's on. Thanks, guys. That's the big one.
Well, how would you rank your 4, Adam, in terms of who you'd be most excited?
Kyle Anderson.
Okay, all right.
The problem is the Warriors make it really hard to trade because it would be like, it's like 2 teams that are like trying to make a trade, but they have to use like faxes or like telegrams nowadays. I don't know. It's terrible. So I was having a lot of trouble with that, but that one just seemed like, defensively, that would be a good fit. I think the other thing is, I know we are all concerned about defense, right? Mm-hmm. Do either of you pay any credence to the fact that what the numbers are telling us is the defense is fine, but the offense is not? Do either of you pay any credence to that?
No, because I feel as though you could tell me those numbers happen, and then I watch that Knicks game, and I just get nightmares. Like, no, it's just that the Knicks and the Celtics and the Cavaliers all have the thing that will destroy Milwaukee, and that is guards who can get wherever they want and score. And you can tell me the numbers are fine, but at the same time, I want to know what those numbers are against those three teams because that can't be good.
Have we beat any of them in a single game this season?
No. Okay. No, we're 0-8.
Literally, I haven't watched Bucks basketball in a month, which makes me a very qualified person to be on this podcast. Mea culpa to reveal that 45 minutes into the recording. But I could believe that they found some sort of semblance of stabilization. I would, like Kyle said, I'd be worried about specific matchups, worried about once teams are able to start hunting a little bit more specifically on a night to, like over the course of a series. Okay. And if I think about it, it's like, so Bobby's a problem on defense, not in a good way, not in like the Bill Simmons. He's a problem. Like he's actually a problem. And if it's like, well, the defense is fine, but we got to fix the offense. What kind of Bobby am I getting? Because Bobby can be a good connector piece. Like there was a stretch there before, I had to go dark that Bobby was like taking threes, taking and making catch and shoot threes. I said, oh my God, they got through to him. Like this is going to work. If it's that Bobby, I mean, I don't know. I guess I would be more interested, but I'm still concerned about the defense. Obviously, that's all I harp on because I can only watch Khris like get crossed over once and have to do a full twirl to like try and catch up to his guy, or like Dame go mental neutral on a play so many times before I'm like, okay, I mean, I can't tell if this is sandbagging or something to be concerned about. So also shouldn't has the Dame Giannis combo looked better? Does it look more competent nowadays than it did like a month ago?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's actually the biggest reason I feel like my opinion has changed on the season. They actually have something that looks, I would say, could be an elite level offense. They basically, I would categorize it as they've brought the screen down a little further and it looks a little more closer to like a side pick and roll than Giannis like struggling to get up way high on there.
Giannis being at half court, like I'll set it up. Let's
yes, it looks good. Like it has looked way better, and they're like actually connecting on some lob passes, which is like I can't believe it took a year and a half to figure that stuff out. But right, don't you think? I mean, that's
no, I agree.
So much better.
We talked about we talked about this. It was like no, the Giannis Dame pick and roll that's looked better. That's looked like the chemistry is there. There is optimism with that. So I would say it's looked much better, and hopeful. And this is kind of where the whole Khris part comes in. It's like I don't know where Khris fits in as well. While Giannis and Dame are actually getting this figured out, so that's why I think the offense will be fine because I still believe in Dame and Giannis doing what they need to do, and then the Bucks are shooting well enough that this doesn't feel as though like it's they're a 36% 3-point shooter, and then they absolutely crater to like 29 in the playoffs. Like AJ Green, he's going to win. He can win you a playoff game by shooting 4 of 7 from 3. Gary Trent Jr. showed he can get a quarter and make 3 or 4 threes out of nowhere. So I think the offense, I feel more fine than as opposed to their defense.
The other thing that I think about is, okay, right now the Dame Giannis thing is working well. Defense is working well, all of that. Once you get to the playoffs, let's say that's our primary action still. It will wear on those guys. Like that's going to be a lot of possessions. Other teams are going to know that's what's coming. They're going to try and dial up on it. They're going to be throwing a lot of pressure at them. Like that combo could still be elite offensively, even in the playoffs. But then how do you compensate if they're given that much of themselves on the offensive ends? Like, okay, are we taking a step back for those guys in particular on defense? And do you need to shore up around them? Because once you get to that point, let's say the Dame Giannis pick and roll is like, that's the function. We're getting it to work. Either those guys are going to get a look or you draw the defense and kick it out. And then it's that point, all the other guys that are around them just become glorified catch and shoot guys, which is fine. Like that's how it should be. Then the catch and shoot guys have to be the main defenders. Giannis can help clean up. So that's why I kind of think about too. It's like, yeah, you want to have guys who can shore up the defense a little bit because the offense, we know, even if that combo doesn't work, like they're going to ride that combo until the end. Like, it's not like they're going to move off of it all that much. I can't imagine, especially now that it seems to work. So I'm extremely encouraged to hear from you guys that it looks like Dame and Giannis don't look like two players who have never suited up next to each other. They take the floor like, who's this guy? Who's that? I've never seen that guy before. I'd like watch a game and be like, I don't remember the last time Dame and Giannis were within like 2 feet of each other. I just like we record them like we're 24 minutes into this game and they haven't looked at each other even once. So I'm extremely encouraged about that. But because of that, I would think the knock-on effect would still be. It's not never a bad thing to improve the defense. Like that was the Bud years calling cards. Like the offense is going to be horrendous, but at least the defense is going to be rock solid. So there's nothing wrong with continuing to kind of pursue that. Even if the numbers look good now, why not keep elevating it if you have the possibility to do it? Beautiful. All right. Gut check real quick because I'm going to have to go do medicine here soon. So we're going to have to start wrapping it up. Do the Bucks make a trade at the deadline? Yes or no?
Yes. Yeah, they'll do something. Yeah.
Okay. Marjan for a second rounder that's never going to convey so we can convert Ryan Rollins to a full-time deal. Is that what we're looking at?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great. Marjan, it's been awesome. It's been such a fun ride. And you had that one game like a month ago where you were in that closing lineup that kind of brought it close. And I think the team still lost, but shout out to you, Marjan. You're a good guy. Any final thoughts around trade deadline at all? Obviously we'll have some more after it's passed.
Trade deadline talk. Let's just get me through it.
It feels a lot less. Yeah. Okay, great.
Hate
yeah.
it.
It definitely feels a lot less exciting because every trade has to be the stupidest trade you've ever seen. It's like, it was already bad before when it would just be Twitter randos on the ESPN trade machine and your replies, you're like, okay, come on. And now it's like even worse. Yeah. I too am like, it'll be good for the team, whether a guy gets moved on or whether to find a little bit of stability around this. So, okay. We're going to switch over then. Head over here. Where's it at? Rapid fire questions. Start our miscellaneous segment. Here we go. First question. I don't even know how you guys would answer this, but this is why we leave it to you. What level of player would need to be traded? Let's say, what level of buck would need to be traded to entice you to do an emergency podcast?
If the Bucks, for some godforsaken reason, get Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal, I'll do it. I'm going to be pissed, but I'll do it.
Okay.
What day is the Thursday? Is it a Thursday?
It's a Thursday. Yep. Ask you on Wednesday.
I have to check my wife's schedule.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Okay, what about outgoing Bucks? Like, let's say it's the Bobby trade has finally happened. Is Bobby like? Don't worry about who's coming.
I would do a solo.
Okay, all right, good.
I'm not doing it.
I've been waiting years for this.
Quite
I
obviously
traded him for Grant Williams last year. God, that would have been great. Please, why didn't we do that?
What about? Yeah, no, I know. He was so mad about it. It's like, come on, Bobby. Let's be. I know you're in all the Visit Milwaukee stuff. We love you, but come on. What about Pat? For you, this one's for you, Adam. I know, Kyle. What about you, Adam? If it's Pat, would you be willing to do that?
I'll record a new intro.
Okay. All right, awesome. And obviously, I think if Khris Middleton gets traded, I'd be willing. Maybe not at work, maybe not even that evening, but I'd be willing to try and do it outside of our normal posting schedule. So shout out to you, Khris. That's what being a Buck for life means, is you get us recording on a Thursday instead of a Sunday. Okay. What was the last best takeout meal that you had?
There's an Indian restaurant by my place. It is phenomenal. I had that like a month ago. It's kind of pricey, but it is good food. It's a little pricey, but it's good.
What's your go-to? What was your go-to order?
It was a beef masala with garlic naan.
Good. Love it. Adam, how about you?
That sounds really good. Haven't done that much takeout lately, to be honest, and haven't found many go-to places near me. But I was just in Philly and I grabbed a hoagie on the street, and that was fantastic.
I can't even remember. You know, do we have their Instagram? Can we look it for?
Is it going to exist after tonight? And is it going to exist potentially in 2 weeks?
I think it might become Big Nicks after tonight. I mean, that big win for the Eagles. So
fly, Eagles, fly, right? Is that the chant or whatever?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Good work, Riley.
My Eagles lore knowledge is it's because what the hell was that stupid movie where the guy's like the walk-on player for the Eagles? Is it Mark Wahlberg?
I know what movie.
Do you know
it?
Is it Invincible?
Yeah, that movie sucked.
Yeah, that is a bad one.
Oh my god! That was like a movie that came out when my youngest stepbrother was like of the age where Kyle's living it right now, where you just watch movies over and over. I probably saw Invincible at least 50 times.
I saw it once. I was like, I never want to see this again.
It's emotional, it's
no, it's
like,
not.
No, yeah, right. It was just like a gussied up version of whatever the hell that movie about Notre Dame is.
Rudy also sucks.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. The formula. I know people love the formula, but okay. Former Buck that the team could trade for that you'd be most excited to get, and don't worry about making it actually work. Is there a former Buck out there floating that the Bucks could acquire, and you'd say, "I'm excited about this, and I think it might actually work"? I have an obvious one for Adam, but we'll see if he gets to it.
Dante.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's playing well again. I was like, fuck, let's buy low on Dante. Like, why not go back to Dante? See if he can't make. He's already won a title.
Because I feel like he would tick as many of the boxes as the Bucks could hope for, like a guard that could hopefully try and guard like a Jalen Brunson. He's young. He can't provide something on offense. It makes sense. Just injuries, but he's been healthy.
He has been healthy. I think he's got a decent contract. The other thing about trying to find former Bucks that you'd be excited about is a large portion of them are retired, overseas, or I don't remember who they are. So like I'm trying to think of recent vintage. I guess Campaign, who's getting really hyped to have Campaign back. I guess like
Sam Merrill was the other one I thought of.
Okay, yeah, probably.
Okay.
Well, we have Sam Merrill and he got AJ Green.
I was gonna say Sam Merrill is the AJ Green at home meme. He's like, "Oh, Mom, I wish we had AJ Green. Like we have AJ Green at home." It's Sam Merrill. It's Jumpers for Jesus, Sam Merrill. I think about that podcast quite a bit too. Is the Jumpers for Jesus? Okay, I can't really think of any other players that would be worth the team finding. We also still have Campaign's trade exception, whatever the fuck that means. I don't know what that means, but we have it. We have it. I'll be honest, I didn't have any other questions, so we'll make that one quick. Let's switch it over here. I think no film review, so we're going to go right into the predictions. And I don't even have the schedule up right now because it's been that long since I was in.
I do.
Here. Kyle, who the teams play this week?
On Monday or today, depending on when you listen to this, they're at Sacramento. Then Tuesday, they're going to play at Portland. At Friday, they'll go and play at San Antonio and then come back to Milwaukee and play Memphis on Sunday.
Adam, what do you think?
I think 2-2. I think they almost always lose to Memphis, even in Milwaukee. So hopefully they win that one, but I think they could lose that one. And then I don't know. Road trips are hard and these teams are playing well. The Kings are playing well. Spurs are always tough. So 2-2.
I'll say 2-2 as well. For God's sake, we have to get Dame a win in Portland, right? We have to. I think the team, it kind of seems like the team's going to go all out. So I would expect a loss to the Kings because Khris is questionable because of the back-to-back. I think they have Khris back. I think they're going to go all out and pray to God. Either they win by a lot or if they need a final shot, please let Dame take it and not Brooke. So I would say losses to Sacramento. Yeah, probably Memphis too, and then Spurs game. Sure, I'll say they win that one, and everybody will marvel ooh and ah about another Giannis Wemby matchup, which they should. So 2-2 this week.
I'm feeling weirdly optimistic. I'm going to say 3-1. I think they'll win the games on the road, but they will get boat raced by Memphis because they always get boat raced by Memphis.
There's no coming back from that right before the All-Star game performance. I mean, that's the kind of loss that scars you for a very long time. You're like, there's 1, 2, 3 Cancun, and there's whatever the hell that was, which was on a different sort. Just, levels we've never seen before in the NBA. Yeah. So,
like that was my sign of, they're never beating this team, no matter what the circumstance. They are never beating this team.
They also lost the last time they played, right? Earlier this season, they lost to the Grizzlies.
Probably,
pretty sure. Yeah. It was probably not it was back when the team sucked. So it was probably not a good performance, but okay. Optimistic from Kyle, neutral from me and Adam, but that's not too bad, especially on a long road trip. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. I think it's ironic we recorded this now because the trade deadline isn't for another 2 weeks, but we wanted to get the ground set now. Anything happens that's, if it's Bobby, then Adam will be on next by himself. If it's Pat, you'll have an intro. If it's Khris, you might hear from us between now and wherever the next regular recording is. Otherwise, you can follow us on YouTube. on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. You can find Dear Diaries, brewhoop.com, pre-game coverage, during game coverage, post-game coverage. We got our columns, the Monday Morning Media Roundup, not back this week, but hopefully back next week after I've had a chance to look at the team. Wednesday weekly wrap-up. We have the different polls. We got a whole bunch of stuff going on over at the site. But otherwise, as always, rate, like, subscribe, share with your friends, all that sort of stuff. And we'll talk to you again very soon.